Hello and welcome back to this episode of Inside Stories by Anu in partnership with Chennai Angels. In the previous segment, we spoke to the founders Sadik and Balaji of Chai Kings. And in this, we're going to be speaking to the Chennai Angel deal champions, Piyush Bhandari and Chandu Nair. So thank you both for joining us today. When it comes to angel investors, the main pinch is between two possibilities, right? One is in investing in a company that fizzles out, and the other is not investing in a startup that rockets to success, the way Chai Kings has. Did you know that Chai Kings fit into the latter category?
I think you can never judge that at the initial stages. At initial stages, nobody would have guessed where the direction would have been. But I think it's more of a gut feel initially, and then based on your gut, things may work and may not work. So in this case, what we assessed was a model, a very interesting space where we did not have a clean and a quality environment when people wanted to have tea, and that's what attracted us. That was a USP here. And that's what made us take the decision, and we loved their idea and concept, which has grown from 3-4 stores to today 56 stores.
Yeah.
We look at it from the competitive landscape. Okay, on the one side, I'm a Nair, but even then I'll bring my ilk into the fold. There's a Nair tea kadai, which is a corner tea shop.
Yeah.
Right? On the other end, you have the Starbucks or the 5-star type of hotels. Now, in between, there are only 1 or 2 places which were not in Chennai, like Chai Point, but again, that is expensive. Even a coffee day today is prohibitively expensive for the average Joe who just wants to go and have a quick cup of tea with a snack.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, either he has to go to a tea shop, which is very sad, and even a lady finds it even more challenging.
Yeah.
What we found very attractive about this model when you did the competitive positioning was that you could have a good cup of tea at 20 rupees at that time. Okay, a good cup of tea with a snack, which is again hygienic, in an AC, non-AC place, but which was very safe, clean, and you got a bill. Okay, with the promise that if you didn't get a bill, you could speak directly to the CEO. Now, when you had these kind of credible promises, number one, that was one part of it. The second is they validated it with some 5-6 outlets by the time they came to us.
Right.
So we had a chance to actually experience what was happening. Given the fact that we could look at it and plot it from the competitive landscape, look at it from a customer's point of view, suppose my sister or daughter or whatever were to go to such a shop, and number 3, actually having tasted the wares, we felt there is an opportunity for a scalable model, which is of a small format, affordable tea shop in a hygienic environment. We felt there was an opportunity to scale.
Right. So you identify this as this is a win and let's back it. How do you support them and how do you mentor them? Because when I spoke to them, they said, they don't interfere in the operations at all, but we get a lot of valuable inputs.
I think from an investor standpoint, our role was more strategic, right? So we cannot and we do not want to involve in operations because we do understand that they are experts in their own domain, right? So our role ends, I wouldn't say ends, ends with reference to investing money in it and making sure that we guide them in areas where they need support. So that's where we come into play, making relationships which they do not have access to, giving them insights on future trends. That's where we are more familiar with and we are connected with. So we play that kind of a role wherein we don't get into the day-to-day activities at all. And we have those touch points once in maybe a month or something. We catch up and then give our feedback and share our thoughts on it.
Right. But you must have also identified some areas that you think need bolstering.
So in terms of processes, of course, we always had interactions with them. We had an internal audit which happens from time to time, which identifies processes and which can be strengthened. So we even discussed with them and we evaluated implementing SAP in the process. Now imagine a tea shop today having SAP is I don't think maybe 2-3 organizations of this size could even think in
Think
India
of it.
today having that. Because when you grow, the first thing is these things, technology enables you to grow faster, and you have less pilferages, you have less time being wasted on things which you shouldn't be wasting on. So technology, that way we've always had discussions with them, and they were always, I mean, incidentally they come from technology background, so I don't think we need to explain them much, but it was more from the angle that it will help them grow faster. People, future investors will look at that. You have robust systems, you do not have leakages in the system. These are things which everybody looks at the business level as well as investors level.
Yeah.
One thing I'll add
Yeah.
is that I think we help them significantly in not having them waste time and energy on fundraising, because we've actually participated with them in 3 rounds of funding, and it was all done through our own members. So a substantial amount of entrepreneur time and energy is taken in fundraising, and with new people. So it becomes like you have to go through the whole song and dance again. Here, you the same guys, 3 rounds. It's a fairly good backing. Number 2, in couple of cases where they even needed external funding, like for example from into our members itself or from third-party institutions, we helped in making referrals and in hastening that process. Because other things being equal, people will do business with those that they know and trust.
Of course.
And the fact that we are vouching for somebody helps in making sure that fundraisers or lending happens far more smoothly. So I think that was a big advantage being allied with us.
There are 2 adjectives that caught my mind. One is, you said smoothly, and the other is staying alive, which very much applies to the period that we've just gone through, which is COVID. It has been turbulent, and staying alive has been at the core of all our attention.
Yeah.
It applies to businesses as well. And they have navigated this.
Yes.
How did you assist them in navigating this period?
I would like to just say that, fortunately, both Sadik and Balaji, we always found them, frugal and agile in their spend. So even in their best of the times, the P&L never looked fancy in terms of, line items, which you usually find people just going haywire in terms of spend. So I don't think if they were not frugal and agile prior to COVID, there was no way they could survive.
You can't suddenly change
You
overnight.
cannot suddenly
Yeah.
make such a big shift. So I would say 70-80, at least 70-80% they were in that mindset. So for them to turn around, obviously it was a very difficult moment for all of them, because all stores being shut for a month, 2 months was impossible to survive. But I think they were able to turn around in that time. TCA was, very supportive in terms of giving that COVID funding also. I think, but a lot of credit goes to them, because at the end of it, even after COVID funding, you could still not take off. But, I think the mindset was from that sense, and it all worked around, and the members also, I think all of us came together because we could understand that this is a good opportunity. This is a tough time. We need to support this 3 to 6 months period. If we don't do it, it's not going to help them, it's not going to help us as well. So I think that mindset is what we are seeing even today, that they are back to the pre-COVID levels, and they are even better than that actually.
What you're saying is actually very clear, that what you look at it as a relationship, and not, because if you look at any relationship, business, non-business, there are tough times, you hang in through the tough times and sort it, then you see better times ahead.
Absolutely.
Right? One of the things I think is, together we were able to take some hard decisions. In the sense, they took the hard decision, but I think we backed them, like closing down certain stores. Even though it cost us more money, going more online than offline, but just being alive in front of the customer, being present in front of the customer. So I think some of the calls that they took, just somehow keep operating at every window you can get. They had regulatory issues, like the regulators, they're treated as a restaurant, actually on paper.
Right.
But the beat constable sees them as a tea shop. Now, a restaurant was allowed to be open, but a tea shop was not. Now, and they had mostly people from outside Tamil Nadu operating stores. So, a lot of practical challenges. I'm saying that, it was a tough period. And even from a funding perspective, Suddenly, anything which had a tremendous offline presence was not seen as attractive by
Correct.
future funders. Okay. Now, at that point in time, your current funders should not just say, okay, let's wash our hands. So, mentally and otherwise too, you need to be engaged. And I think we managed to do that, because even now, I would say we are still not fully out of the woods, but I think there's significant runway for us to, make use of this opportunity and forge ahead.
Right.
That's what, and I think that alignment was there. What more important is to have investor and entrepreneur aligned, at least for the future direction. I think that was there.
Absolutely.
So that is one thing that you're very happy about, isn't
Yes.
it? What else are you happy about? What about their progress, about their process?
I mean, there are many things. One is that the space which they are focused in. I mean, we deliberated many times. Should we go open big cafes? Should we change and pivot our models? What we like about the whole arrangement is that there is a very clear focus and the format right now. Because in this format, we know that the opportunity is that each city can take at least 150 stores. Each city. So we are not even talking of 2-tier or 3-tier and other states today. So the opportunity is that we can even open, if we have 1,500 stores today, like Cafe Coffee Day could survive at that price point. You imagine a store with this format. You have many more consumers here. Cafe Coffee Day was only addressing to the elite.
Yes.
Here it's entry, mid and elite. All of us have today. I mean, it's not that Chai Kings is only ordered by people who are crossing that shop and would go and have. Today, the concept of ordering tea was never ever even imagined at home. Tea at home today, okay, there's more to have tea, let's order at home. I mean, nobody could have imagined this 2 years back.
No, I was surprised as well when I normally used to ordering coffee. Actually,
Yeah.
even coffee a little bit.
Yeah.
Tea never.
Correct.
But then recently I started ordering online tea.
Yeah, that's
So
also
yes, I do
sometimes
order
at
from
home.
chai tea. Yeah, sitting at home and I can go to the kitchen and make. It's still convenient with that beautiful flask that comes
Yeah.
in.
Correct.
So I think the whole model started 4 years back when they had 4 stores, and they were the first companies to start the packaged model, right? And at that time, online selling of tea was never even a concept. So today, more than 50% of the sales, if you see, is coming through online platforms. So even though it's a traditional tea
Brick and
shop,
mortar,
if you want to call it, but that way. But if you see that, the online model has evolved so much that you see people, the same customers ordering every day. So the model, the format, the focus is what we like. I think that's a key. And you don't complicate your menu.
Keep
Right?
it simple.
Yeah, keep it simple.
Correct.
And you just order what people, you keep what people want actually, rather than having 100 items and people using just 10 items every day. I think that's the format which they have had, that the menu is that, things which you like to have with tea, and something if you're hungry, you would land up ordering it also.
So one couple of things is, I think they've also been very experimental for a tiny tea shop, if you want to look at it. Okay,
Yeah.
for example, recently they introduced something called a saffron tea, which is a saffron type of tea, which is mostly popular in Dubai and Middle East.
Yeah.
And if you look at the Sulaimani tea, it's not what you'd normally find as Sulaimani tea in, say, Kerala or even in the Middle East. We found the guys here don't like Sulaimani tea with the plain just black tea plus lemon. They found that they require to have some spices. Then only so there's a star anise and all added in it. Then they found there's also one segment which wants to eat something more substantial than your samosa or your light snack. So they introduce a range of Maggi dishes, but all affordable. They're all like in the 100, sub 100 range. So the typical order value or the bill value for a guy doesn't go beyond 150, even if he's eating a fairly substantial quantity. So keeping it affordable but innovative in different ways, I think that's one key thing. So when you experiment and find what works for the local flavor, because tea is very local many times.
Yeah.
So a tea in Hyderabad is very different from a tea in Kerala, very different from a tea here.
Yeah.
So their ability to understand, these nuances, number one. Number two, to also nudge the customer. So when we looked at like introducing Flask and making it online, was nudging the customer to change behavior.
Yeah.
But they added things like Maggi set. Okay, they added poha, which is not very native to Tamil Nadu.
Yeah.
And poha has again become, I think, fairly successful. So when you look at product mix experimentation, format experimentation, for example, in the Mount Road branch has got 2 levels, and the other branch is only single level. So the fact is, upstairs you can have like a cafe feel, and the downstairs you can have the classic, tea shop feel. The formats that they have, for example, you have the metro station format, the mall format. The main street format is, of course, the default that most of us see, but there is an IT park format, there is a metro station format, there is a mall format, and I have not seen this, but in Tirumangalam they also have a terrace room format.
Right.
Okay. So, like I was jocularly telling them, it's like Mottama tea.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that they're having in a small thing which is this 200, 300 square feet. There are so many possibilities.
Right.
That's, I think, gives them due credit, and the fact that while there is a sameness, there is also an interesting difference across the shops and outlets is what makes this a pretty interesting.
So it's like the passion fuels their growth and also innovation, because they are innovating across their recipe, across what they're offering, what formats they're following.
Plus process, plus standardized purchases.
And like you said, SAP.
So if you take all of this, if you take it, that there is a method to, and what seems to be an ordinary operation. But there is actually very solid background to it, and a lot of people don't see the back end.
The genius is in the ordinary.
Yeah. That is there, and it's also the devil is in the details.
Yes.
So I think they've taken care of a lot of that detailing very well. And having been from a retail background, they know already what customers seem to like. They've run a Subway franchise before, they've also run a beauty business before. So they're fairly good understanding of what could potentially work.
Right.
But the ability to experiment is important for an entrepreneur, and I'm very happy with that.
Yeah. And what have been your learnings in this journey?
I mean, I'm a chartered accountant, so I had no idea about retailing. But yes, we've obviously worked with clients. For us, I think in the process, the amount of learning we have had in terms of creativity, just discussed in the previous point, in terms of menu, design, format, quality. Again, 4 years back, if you had the tea and today you had the tea, is why people come back to you is because you don't like tea tasting differently every day, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
So quality at a retail level is very different versus quality at our level. So it's much more complicated for them. So we've learned so many things in the process.
I've been in marketing years back, but at a different era. So if you look at it, while there are a lot of things which look like they've changed, there are certain fundamentals which don't change. I earlier worked in Asian Paints. Asian Paints is a market leader in India because it keeps the fundamentals always intact. It never forgets the basics, okay, which is that you give the customer a set of choices that the customer readily takes to. Okay. Number two, you are the best in that class. For example, a customer comes, there should be no stock out. Availability should be kind of guaranteed. He should have an ecosystem of influencers like painters, etc., to make him enjoy the product, what have you. So one good thing I have understood is that whatever be the business, the basics should be sound. If the foundation isn't sound, you cannot scale. And I think even in this particular case, because they had the basics clear right from day one, that helped them making that scaling happen. Number two, that you have to keep experimenting and being innovative in many things. So I never thought, for example, that online people would order an 80 rupee, 250 ml dabba of tea, a box, a flask of tea.
Yeah.
But it's happening. So what it makes you think is, what are the kind of changes? It keeps you very attentive to what changes are happening in consumer behavior. I write also occasionally, so many of these things, you keep a track of what happens. You also get interested by the new breed of entrepreneurs and what's happening in entrepreneurship in India. And you'll find that over the last several years, there is interest which has grown towards formalizing entrepreneurship. And it's not just certain business communities, which are just getting into business. It is any ordinary person today has the ability to get into business. The other big learning is the fact that there is a bunch of interested, committed investors. who are willing to support new ideas and new entrepreneurs, whom they may not know from Adam. Whereas earlier it was that you need to know the guy, he needed to be from your community, or you needed to have some this thing. Here, virtually many times it's blind. You're just meeting the guy for the first time, you're getting convinced, you do some background check, you do some diligence, but you're willing to support. Okay. Now, if you look at it, in the last, therefore, 10-15 years, all these major changes have happened, and it's all happening to help scale this thing. For me, as an entrepreneur, as plus also an investor, one of the things that I feel India many times forgets when it's doing entrepreneurship is the ability to provide employment. But I think a humble tea shop, as soon as you set it up, immediately provides employment for a very ordinary set of people.
True.
Okay.
Yes.
So therefore, I see this also as a great chance for us to contribute in that sense. So multiple levels. I'm very happy that Chennai Angels is supporting a venture like Chai Kings.
And what are your hopes for their future?
I think when you look at the tea or coffee format, the one name which rings bell is always Starbucks, right? And Starbucks obviously is at a very premium segment where each coffee is about 400-500 rupees, right? So the vision for them, I feel, is that the way Starbucks has grown internationally, and at every 100 meters you see sometimes you have a store because there's a need. I mean, otherwise they wouldn't. So my vision is that they should become Starbucks of India for that space they are in, because that's the opportunity. And why shouldn't you become? We say the Atmanirbhar Bharat, right? Which is what this could be. The case for them. That is a potential.
So I think I would echo what Piyush says. I think if you take the QSR, the quick service restaurant opportunity in India, there are very few homegrown brands. In other places in the US, even in a place like Philippines, there is a Jollibee, somebody who's displaced even McDonald's. So, and he's doing the same burger and other kinds of things. So it's possible, like he rightly said, for a huge growth, in scale, and also in terms of not only scale, in terms of formats, in terms of like product mix and what have you. I think the multiple opportunities. I think we just scratched the surface because we're only right now operating predominantly in one city with a toehold in a couple of other cities like Coimbatore and Hyderabad. So I would say there's huge amount of opportunity for a homegrown domestic brand to be the affordable, hygienic, great tea plus snack outlet. And I think that void can be filled by Chai Kings.
So when you look at the hope that you have for Chai Kings, the automatic question is, what are their long-term plans? I understand that long-term cannot be too long-term. So then what are we looking in the next 3 years?
I think we deliberated this in the last 6 months with them, and we found that one thing is very clear, that the amount of opportunity which we are looking at is immense. But if we were to get to numbers, right, if we were to look at 3 years numbers, how many stores do we want to open? We are now discussing that we should look at least a 10x growth, at least be able to open 300-400 stores across India, spread the format, localize the menus, because those are capabilities which have been tested in 3 markets today: Chennai, Hyderabad and Coimbatore. So that's what we are looking at, and I think that's an exercise which is work in progress for us, and so that they can go to the next level of growth and be able to look at this 300-400 store growth story, which is very doable, and they can scale. Because the model, the format, the vendors, the food, supply chain, logistics, and interestingly, people. We've never heard them telling that we have challenges with people, where everywhere you find people complaining about that. Because of the brand and the culture they have built in the company, they never have a challenge in even getting people today.
Right.
So I think this is the long-term, at least 3-year vision which we are looking at and discussing with them. Yeah.
We are hopeful that with the current funding environment, getting this should not be too much of a challenge.
Fingers
crossed.
Yes.
As always. And we'll probably energize ourselves over a cup of
chai. Yes. And I think I will join you there. Thank you very much for joining in. It has been really fascinating to listen to both the founders as well as both all of you. Funders. Yes.
And both of us trying to give you fundas.
Yes. And I hope they've also got some fundas. And this, I think the other thing would be great is if by watching this, if there are more entrepreneurs out there who get inspired and they say, okay, let's look at what are we passionate about, what is the pain point, what can I solve, what problem am I solving. That will be a bigger win for everyone concerned.
Yes, you'll be very happy.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.